The 1954 Toronto mayoral campaign featured a showdown between two municipal stalwarts, Leslie Saunders and Nathan Phillips. Both were Tories, and both had served at City Hall for decades. In that era, mayoral elections took place every year. Generally, Toronto's early chief magistrates weren't important political leaders. With a few, their names survive because they adorned stadiums or ferries. Most, however, have been forgotten, leaving no particular legacy. That year's race, however, offered something different. A dynamic that seemed well-suited to a period of rapid post-war change. Saunders represented the old guard, and specifically the Orange Order, a defiantly anti-Catholic fraternity that traced its roots to the immigration to Toronto of Ulster Protestants from Northern Ireland. The Orangemen were intensely conservative, more British than the British, as the saying went, and had dominated local government for decades. Phillips, though he had served for many years as an alderman and a controller, exemplified a very different outlook. A glad-handing lawyer from Brockville, Phillips was Jewish. His religion hadn't hurt his political career, but Toronto, known as the Queen's City, had never elected a Catholic mayor, much less a Jewish one. The unexpected outcome of their dramatic showdown was to reset the city's politics forever. During the post-war years, Toronto was making space for thousands of returning soldiers and therefore faced acute housing shortages. The baby boom was fueling suburban expansion as well as post-war prosperity and consumerism. The city had also become the destination for tens of thousands of immigrants and refugees, veterans and their Dutch or British war brides, displaced persons from the concentration camps, as well as Poles, Italians, Germans, Ukrainians, Austrians, and other Central Europeans. Immigrants were changing Toronto. Born in London, England in 1899, Leslie Saunders arrived in Toronto via North Bay in 1928 and worked as the business manager for the Sentinel, which was the Orange Order's local paper and stridently anti-Catholic. He was elected to City Council in 1942, a time when 16 of 23 aldermen were Orangemen. The order traces its roots to William of Orange's victory over the Catholic army of King James II at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. In Northern Ireland, Orangemen paraded through Catholic neighborhoods, inciting riots and sectarian violence. In the late 19th and early 20th century, Toronto was sometimes described as Canada's Belfast for its staunchly Orange culture, which featured nepotism, anti-papist rhetoric, and Orange Day parades, though little of the overt violence from the old country. Nate Phillips, as he was known, had a career as a litigator in Toronto and a garrulous, self-deprecating manner. His family traced its roots to some of the earliest Jewish settlers to Upper Canada. He joined the Conservative Party in his 20s and was elected to City Council in 1926, hoping to use that office as a stepping stone. Phillips ran 3 times for the provincial legislature in ridings around Spadina, but lost each race. He then ran unsuccessfully for mayor twice, against Allan Lamport in 1951 and 1952, and finally decided to leave public life. The December 1954 election really began earlier that year, when the incumbent, Allan Lamport, resigned to become the chair of the TTC. Saunders, as deputy mayor, stepped in to fill his place. Not long afterwards, he released a statement on City of Toronto letterhead that exemplified the bellicose rhetoric for which the Orange Order was well known. He extolled the virtues of the city's Protestant base, quote, reminding Torontonians of their British heritage. Saunders even compared the Allied victory over the Nazis to William's 1690 triumph at the Battle of the Boyne, and announced a major parade to mark the day, July 12th. By the early 1950s, Toronto's Orange Order was waning in its influence. Orange lodges were losing members and closing. A younger generation didn't care about Boyne, nor did they see the benefits of joining. Saunders' move that summer irritated Catholics and moderate Orangemen and drew intense media condemnation, including from the Toronto Telegram, the Toryist of all the city's dailies. The only rivers that Leslie Saunders is expected to concern himself with as mayor of Toronto, the Telly scolded, are the Don and the Humber. Phillips threw his hat into the ring later in the fall in a raucous campaign that saw Saunders rail at the media and threaten to ban reporters from covering council sessions. Phillips responded by promising to begin work on a civic square and the Bloor-Danforth subway, keep spending under control, and protecting the freedom of the press. with Saunders, quote, bouncing from one fiasco to the next, as Jamie Bradburn described the race in a 2010 article. The newspapers all endorsed Phillips, who won by a margin of almost 4,000 votes. Nate Phillips' mayoralty lasted just 7 years, to 1962, but it was a period of intense change. During that time, the City of Toronto became part of Metro, headed by the autocratic Tory power broker and builder Frederick Gardner. As he finessed that complicated political relationship, Phillips made a point of attending as many public events as he could. Indeed, his relentless professional social calendar became not just a calling card, but a quirk for which he was satirized. As is well known, Phillips unexpectedly intervened in the staid design competition to build a new city hall, and set in motion the search for an international architect and a marquee design that would put modern Toronto on the world map. But perhaps Phillips' most important legacy flowed from a line that he used to describe his position. He promised to be a, quote, mayor for all the people. The slogan, which is still in use, expressed an outlook that spoke to post-war Torontonians. The city, Phillips was saying, could no longer be the exclusive domain of the old Anglo majority, with its bigoted ideas about the role of the church and Protestant morality. As a Jew, he understood the geography of exclusion and therefore the importance of inclusion better than most. He projected an aspiration that endures to this day.